Hey there, everybody. It's Friday. It's Friday the 19th. It's like 11 hours since I did the last video. But we're here in the morning. We're talking baseball. It's the private video. I'm not going to release this video until at least 7 p.m. So we'll get these games started and give the advantage to those people that have subscribed. Thank you. Picked up a couple new subscribers over the last to the MLB algorithm. Appreciate it. It's helpful. So let's get into this. We're going to go game by game. I'm going to make wagers on these games today. That's bad luck for everybody else, though, because when I make wagers, bad things happen. I didn't bet at all yesterday. I had a perfect day. So maybe I shouldn't bet, but we're going to talk about all these games and dig through each game, talk about all the stats in the algorithm to really try to make some educated decisions about what's happening. So first thing that I see here when I look at the day pivot sheet, which is really the look of combination string 488, which is this combination string right here. It's heavily weighted on starting pitcher and a little bit on BABIP, which is a batting stat for the players, as well as team ERA, and lineup factors a little bit in here. So what is this showing? It's showing that all games above 10% margin are lopsided matchups that the algorithm would generally say to play. That's everything from Arizona, the Cubs, the Braves, the Brewers, the Red Sox, and the Rockies. So there are 6 teams on here. This is what I would probably throw on my round robin. 6 teams is a pretty good number to bet in a round robin. A lot of these lines are pretty reasonable. So if you're not really doing any further analysis and you're just glancing at this file, that's what it says. There are 2 underdogs on that list, and we'll discuss more detail what's going on in this Arizona game in a second. When I look over at the macro average, which is the running of the macro in all 500-ish combinations, we're just checking out the average margin when we look at all combinations and what the order is. And it does still have Arizona on top. You can see it still has Arizona, the Cubs, Atlanta, Milwaukee. Philadelphia gets higher up over here. Cleveland is higher up over here. The Yankees are about the same spot. But notice Boston goes down a bit. So Boston's in 5th place in our combination, but they're in 9th place in the average of all combination strings. Colorado's even further down here, which makes this even more suspect, this Colorado pick. So it's nice to look at both of these, because even though this combination string of 488 has been doing better than the average of all of them recently, you still want to have confirmation both ways, looking at it both ways. So your Arizona, Cubs, Atlanta, Milwaukee, those are a big 4. And if I were to recommend playing 4 teams straight bet wise that will probably be profitable, it's probably going to be these 4 of Arizona, the Cubs, Atlanta, and Milwaukee. Yeah, and those lines are an underdog for Arizona, -162 for Chicago, -196 for Atlanta, and -115 for Milwaukee. And notice a couple things about Milwaukee that's making me want to say that Milwaukee is probably the pick of the day here and not Arizona. First of all is look at the team power percentage, which is something, it's an important factor over here. There's only one team that has a higher team power percentage than Milwaukee today, and that's Cincinnati for some reason. But they have this high team power percentage of 13. They've got a margin of 16%, so they're 16% in our calculations better than St. Louis in this combination. And they're also up here with a 12% margin overall, putting up 6 runs, and the line is only -115. So while you would normally think Arizona would be the #1 pick, being on top here at an underdog line, I'm going to explain to you pitching matchup wise why this is a little bit more suspect, and I'm not thinking it's the #1 pick. But Milwaukee seems like the #1 pick. They really do. You're looking for a line that's close to -110. You're looking for confirmation on all the other factors. So tentatively, we're going to say that Milwaukee is the pick of the day. And now we're going to go through all of the games and really dig down and do some further analysis to confirm or contradict what the assessments we just came to. So we'll start going in order here. And we'll look at this first game, the only day game, which starts in a few hours. Notice none of these lineups are confirmed. We're working with all expected lineups right now. It's a good idea when the lineups get announced to go to RotoWire, get them, paste them in here, and refresh, because that you'll get confirmed lineups, and that'll give you a better lineup factor number and will help your predictions. Let's make sure we have lineup factors for all teams. We do. So I didn't screw up any pitcher names. So let's go through each game. First, Miami, Chicago. Says Chicago can put up a bunch of runs. Jameson Taillon, though, is working off of 2023 pitching stats. This is making his first start this year. AJ Puck has pitched terrible for Miami. Now, I shouldn't say terrible. He's been losing games for Miami. Miami's not a very good team. But everything's favoring the Cubs, and really every factor is favoring the Cubs here. So even though you have a first start of the season for Jameson Taillon, they're probably going to win this game. So your day game at Wrigley, I don't know if it's still raining in Chicago. They've been canceling games frequently there for both the White Sox and the Cubs. So we'll see what happens, but Chicago is pretty confirmed here. That's a pretty reasonable line for this situation, and hopefully Jameson Taillon pitches well in his first start this year. Angels in Cincinnati. You've got Nick Lodolo has not given up a run this year in one start, pitching 5 innings. Tyler Anderson is also a good pitcher, so you can see why it's wanting this to be an under. Games in Cincinnati usually have more runs. It's a ballpark where the ball tends to fly out of there. That's why you're getting a 9.5. But both of these pitchers are off to a great start, and you might actually have a low-scoring game. These lineup factors are not huge, and there's a good chance this game stays under. Cincinnati is the 8th pick of the day. You've got really limited pitching stats for Nick Lodolo. You know, he's eventually going to give up a run this year at some point, so this will get an adjust. And that 1.47 ERA for Tyler Anderson is also fantastic. So if anything, you want to try to go with an under 9.5, because when you see pitchers like this, usually you're thinking an over-under is set at like 7 or 8, 7.5 or 8. You're at least getting the 9.5 because the game's in Cincinnati. Game probably goes under, but over-under picks, never the pick of the day. It's just something you can kind of infer and look at. Runs are never really all that consistent anyway. So probably a stay away game because this pitching matchup is so good, and it's not really a top 5 pick. Boston and Pittsburgh. Really likes Boston here. Brian Bello pitching better than Quinn Priester, who's making his first start this year. So we're looking at Quinn Priester's 2023 stats. While Pittsburgh's lineup factor is stronger than Boston, Boston still has this really strong bullpen and should get a good start out of Brian Bello, actually. Says Boston can hit this pitcher who's making his first start for Pittsburgh this year. So Boston is a 5 pick of the day. That's a pretty good line at -104. It's because Pittsburgh has been playing pretty well this year, but the pitching matchup, which is why the algorithm's favoring Boston today, does say that's a pretty good pick for Boston. So that could probably go on the round robin list when you're looking at this. White Sox in Philadelphia. White Sox are the worst team in Major League Baseball right now. That's not even debatable. Philly, -180. Line's pretty consistent with the White Sox being bad. Spencer Turnbull has pitched really well. Garrett Crochet, actually one of the better pitchers on the White Sox staff, but they just can't hit. So here with that over-under of 8, unless Philly lights it up, this game probably stays under, as a lot of these White Sox games do. And it's almost never a bad idea to bet against the White Sox. So you know, Philly probably wins this game. Look at how low this lineup factor is. If, you know, combining Philadelphia and the under in this game is not a bad idea, because Philly's not hitting the ball this year, and these pitchers are pretty good today. So it's Philly to win, and it's potentially the under as well in that game. Houston and Washington, it wants to make this game the closest game of the day, this Houston-Washington game. Houston is barely favored by margin, but not favored by projected score. where it favors the Nationals. Mackenzie Gore has pitched well, and Verlander is making his first start of the year for Houston. He's, of course, a good pitcher and pitched well last year, but Mackenzie Gore is one of those people on Washington staff that's really pitched well so far this year. So it thinks a weirdly close game that is too tough to call when it comes to winners, and probably too close to call when it comes to over-unders. So other than the fact that you get a really amazing line with Washington at plus 145, that's what I would consider for a straight bet, because this game is going to go 50-50 most of the time. So if you can get a plus 145 line in the long run, you make money winning half the games. But it's not a good round robin pick. It's not a good parlay pick, because anything is going to happen in this game. So look at a potential upset out of Washington there. If anything, the algorithm says this game is extremely close. Tampa Bay and the Yankees. You've got pretty good pitcher in Clark Schmidt going against Tyler Alexander, whose ERA is not good this year, even though he's 1-0. Thinks the Yankees put up runs in a game like this, winning about 6 or 7-3. The line's not great. It's a little bit closer. I mean, I can see why. It's thinking Tyler Alexander's ERA, but look at the pitcher whip is similar. This is a fairly close game, and I don't think that this line is good enough to take as a 7 pick. Because when we look back at our day pivot in the order, what you're looking for is when you see these bad colored lines toward the bottom, that means these games are too close for lines like that. Like it says, do not play the Dodgers down here again against the Mets. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, don't play him. It's way too close to play at a minus 200. So this is right about the cutoff where you're getting this minus 174 out of the Yankees. They probably win, but it's not as good as the lines that are above it. So, you got to win those games like at least 2 out of 3 times. And it's right on the borderline. It's not even a 10% margin game. So I'm going to say tentatively stay away, which means they probably win, but yeah, so it's a little bit too close for that line. Oakland and Cleveland. Look at how close that game is. Barely favoring Cleveland. There are some healthy high ERAs in this game in Cleveland, and it's predicting a 5-4 game. So it's predicting an over 5-5 game, actually. It's predicting over this 8. Even though Oakland's lineup factor is pretty low. Cleveland, a 13th pick. Once again, too close to call, really, for winners. If anything, I'm thinking the over in this game. It looks like it's more likely, but over-unders can be iffy. So too close to call a winner in that one. Texas and Atlanta likes Atlanta. Likes Atlanta 7-4. Andrew Heaney's ERA at 0-2 is about 6.7. Chris Sale going for Atlanta. He's 1-1. His ERA is also a little high. You can see it's predicting runs, but the over-under set at 9.5, so there's not a lot of value there. Atlanta's almost minus 200. Kind of makes sense. They're a good team. That they're favored in all these categories in their home, so it does say Atlanta. It'll say you can pay that minus 200 on Atlanta in this situation. It's obviously not a great line, but they'll probably win, so they are on there as a 3rd pick. Baltimore and Kansas City. It says Kansas City at an underdog line. So here you're talking about the 12th pick of the day in a close game with Baltimore. Says they win by over a run, but you get the underdog line here. So this is one of those things where even though Kansas City is further down on the list, you've got a good pitcher in Alex Marsh going. Dean Kremer's 0-1. Everything favors Kansas City slightly except for lineup factor, which slightly favors Baltimore. So it will be close, but Kansas City home, straight bet-wise, this pick wins probably a little more than 50% of the time. Therefore, that plus 120 is a pretty good straight bet line. So straight bet-wise, Kansas City is probably on that list. Too close for a round robin or a parlay, though. Detroit, Minnesota. Says Minnesota at minus 150. Joe Ryan has a nice low ERA. Both these pitchers are 0-1 to start the season, though. Jack Flaherty is also okay, and both these pitchers are probably going to go 6 innings. Notice that there is extremely low 7.5 over under in this game. That's because the lineup factors for these teams are really low. How about that? Look at how low those lineup factors are. So both these teams have offensive problems, and the pitching's pretty good in that game. That over under now kind of makes sense. It does say Minnesota, but it's kind of far down on this list, and it's really the line's not great. So I'm going to say stay away from that as well, because that can probably go either way at a 6% margin. Milwaukee, St. Louis. Is Milwaukee our pick of the day? It is saying 6.4 to 2, 6-2, minus 115. Freddie Peralta, look at how great and green all these numbers are here. I'm going to confirm it. The pick of the day is Milwaukee, because you've got both of these pitchers have pitched in 2024. Kyle Gibson's ERA is up at a 6. Peralta is just pitching great. So in order to lose this game, you got to have Peralta get hit like he has not been hit all year. Kyle Gibson's got to pitch excellent, which is not characteristic for how he has pitched this year. Milwaukee, who's supposed to hit better than St. Louis, has to not perform on offense, and St. Louis has to overperform because the ERA factor is about the same. Everything is favoring Milwaukee in this game, except slightly bullpen ERA. That's it. And then they're about the same. So Milwaukee is the pick of the day. And if you do one thing today, it is Milwaukee. Seattle and Colorado. You got an underdog Colorado line here, plus 120. Dakota Hudson's 0-3, though, but his ERA is good. I don't know, or okay for a Colorado ERA of 4. Emerson Hancock is also 1-2 and has an ERA of almost 8. Colorado's bullpen's always a little higher because these games in Colorado produce more runs. They have a 13% margin in our comparison, and that is because Emerson Hancock is not a winning pitcher this year for Seattle. So it is expecting one of these huge scoring games in Colorado, and that they get to the over 10.5, and Colorado wins this line, wins at this underdog line. And Dakota Hudson gets his first win of the year, or no decision, because this game goes late with a lot of runs. So Colorado's playable here, absolutely, and that's due to Emerson Hancock, really. Yeah, I mean, lineup factor should be a little more inflated for Colorado, and it's not. So both these teams kind of have trouble hitting, but in Colorado, they should probably hit better today. So Colorado's on the list, certainly as a straight bet. And I'll leave it off as a round robin, but also the over, it's a possibility there for sure in Colorado. You want to find yourself betting overs in Colorado. You end up getting lucky late in games as the ball just continues to fly out of the park. Toronto and San Diego. It favors San Diego as the 10th pick. That's a pretty good line at minus 115. Yariel Rodriguez has pitched well, but in his only 3 innings pitched. Matt Waldron also pitched well, although is 0-1. San Diego probably wins this game. It's borderline bettable, but it's way down here. And Yariel Rodriguez's limited pitching stats kind of don't give you enough to act on in this game here. So it's going to be a close one. I'll just say stay away, but it's one San Diego probably wins more than 50% of the time, and it's almost bettable at that line. Mets and the Dodgers. We said that the Dodgers are way too far down on this list and that this game is almost a pick 'em. It actually favors the Mets in point projections at plus 170. So the Mets plus 1.5 is probably the play here. Sean Manaea is a pretty good pitcher. Yoshinbu, also a pretty good pitcher, likes to throw a lot of pitches and strike people out. Mets have been playing better. Mets bullpen ERA is better. Mets might pull off an upset in this game, and the plus 1.5 is probably the play on a round robin, because home teams winning by 1 run happens a lot the way they play those games. So I'll probably throw the Mets plus 1.5 on a round robin. I think that's the solid pick given how far down this is on the list. And then we finish with that number 1 top of the list pick, which is this Arizona. And I said we'd get to it in a minute. About 15 minutes ago. Well, we're getting to it now. What's going on here is Jordan Montgomery is making his first start here of the season. And I combined his stats together. He was with St. Louis and Texas over last year. And the combined stats make him 10-11 with a 3.2 ERA and a 1.19 whip. Those stats are better than Blake Snell this year. Blake Snell has had 2 terrible outings so far this year and has a ridiculous ERA. Jordan Montgomery pitched a AAA game a couple weeks ago and got hit for like 7 runs and 2 home runs in like 3 innings or something. It was bad. So what's going on is that the odds makers, the people that are researching this game are like, we don't know how well Jordan Montgomery is going to pitch. We don't know if he's the Jordan Montgomery of last year. I don't know whether he's coming back from injury or what happened. I think there must have been an injury. So there's just a big question mark on how he's going to play. And Blake Snell has a great reputation. Just because he's pitching poorly this year, that probably won't last forever, and he's probably going to start pitching better. So that's why you end up with this underdog line for Arizona, and you end up with this crazy distorted score because we're looking at Jordan Montgomery last year against a poor performing Blake Snell of this year. So for those weird reasons about what the projections are doing in this game, I'm going to say it is not the #1 pick of the day. It's just an artifact of a lopsided pitching comparison that's not necessarily current. So I don't even know if it's bettable. It looks just really weird. And when you do the analysis every day and you really pay attention to the file, I can provide you with educated information on this game. When I try to do this all summer for everybody and don't have the time, I end up just saying, oh, Arizona's the #1 pick of the day, an underdog line, play them. That's not accurate. You really have to dig deep and understand what happened here. So all that being said, the answer is that the Cubs probably win, the Braves probably win, Milwaukee is the pick of the day, Boston probably wins and is bettable, Colorado is bettable, Philadelphia is bettable, Kansas City is bettable as a straight bet, and there's probably some overs in this Cleveland-Oakland game, and there was an under that looked good in another game. What was it? It was the under in this game, in this LA Cincinnati game, under 9.5, because of this good pitching matchup so far this year. So there's a lot available today. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what I'm going to bet because I don't even know yet. And I curse everything. So you don't want to bet what I bet. You want to bet according to what the algorithm says and the diagnosis of Milwaukee being the pick of the day. I mean, that we're gonna try to hit our 3rd pick of the day essentially in a row. And that is Milwaukee today. So that is the team. And but around robin wise, Chicago, Atlanta, Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia. These are good teams for a round robin. Yeah, and the over in that Colorado-Seattle game as well as potentially Colorado. That was a lot. That's the video. Good luck, everyone. May all your picks be winning. And go Brewers here on Friday. It's a day of baseball because hockey is over. And there's only a couple basketball games today. And somebody asked me about the football league, the United Football League. I can't really set up an algorithm for that because they don't have historical stats for that league. So we would have to build something for the current season and adopt the NFL algorithm. And I don't have the energy for it. Plus, I don't think there's really going to be a demand for it. You got to remember that we know we're only the end of April, but May, June, July, by the end of July, it's NFL time already anyway into preseason. So there's only a few months and I don't need to be doing United Football League with hockey playoffs going on and NBA playoffs and WNBA. Essentially, I would say that what you should do is you should, as a sports gambler, you should focus on your NBA playoffs. You should focus on WNBA when it comes out. And while the beginning of the season, while the odds makers catch up to everything that we're doing here with baseball's working pretty well as we keep doing analysis on it every day. I would focus on that. And hockey's fun to watch, but you're not going to make money betting on hockey unless you get lucky. Or bet unders. Betting unders in hockey is probably the only play. That's the smart man's bet. So, all right. Good luck, everyone. All your picks be winning. Go Brewers.